Hello, back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with some more updates coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a lot of big news to share with you today. So I know I'm usually off on Sundays, but we had some huge news that came out today, and I just had to hop on here and share some of this information with you. So a huge report from the Financial Times has broke today that Russia apparently has recruited hundreds of Houthi mercenaries from Yemen to fight inside the war against Ukraine. There is also a video that is surfacing on X right now that I will show you guys in just a little bit that claims to show Yemeni fighters that are fighting alongside the Russians inside the war against Ukraine. I'm not sure if this video footage was recorded inside Ukraine or maybe inside of Russia, maybe the Kursk region. Don't really know, but definitely a huge report today from the Financial Times. And also this operation that transfers the Yemeni citizens, or maybe these might be Houthi fighters, from Yemen over to Russia is being described as a shadowy trafficking operation. So apparently many of these fighters are being offered high-paying jobs inside of Russia and also potentially Russian citizenship. Once they arrive in Russia, they realize that they've been forced into the military to fight for Russia. And we have definitely seen this before also with, I think, Nepal and also India. We have heard reports even from India that there was many Indian fighters that were being duped into thinking they were going to get good jobs inside of Russia and some sort of trafficking operation, and then they ended up on the front lines inside of Ukraine, and India months back was trying to get a lot of their citizens back. So it looks like this is happening with the Yemen Houthis as well. Maybe some of them are choosing to go to war inside of Ukraine also voluntarily, but maybe a lot of them involuntarily, okay? So we're going to talk about that today. I also have some reports that show what the Ukrainians were targeting inside the Kursk region yesterday. Looks like the Ukrainians were targeting an S-400 radar station in the Kursk region of Russia, and we reported to you guys yesterday that Ukraine fired anywhere from 5 to 10 ATACMS ballistic missiles. It looks like that was the target, and it may have been destroyed as well, according to the information that I have. So that's some big news. Looks like the Russians could be blind in terms of air defense in the Kursk region of Russia. And also, I've got some pictures today coming out from Ukraine's SBU, their security service, showing the wreckage of the Cedar missile. Okay, so this is the hypersonic ballistic missile, the medium-range missile that was fired by Russia onto the city of Dnipro just a few days ago. So it looks like they were able to obtain the wreckage from that missile, and they're currently studying it right now. So we're going to go ahead and talk about all this stuff today. I've got numerous other things to go over as well. So let's go ahead and hop right into this. We're going to start off here on the Financial Times. I'm going to briefly go over this article. We're not going to go over the entire thing. I will cite it down below as well in the description for you guys. You can read the rest of it if you want to. Okay, so it says here, Russia recruits Yemeni mercenaries to fight in Ukraine. Mysterious Houthi-linked company duping men into joining Moscow's war machine. So this is a picture of that video that I will show you guys on X. It does have subtitles as well. Yeah, appears to show these are Yemeni fighters that are fighting on behalf of Russia inside of Ukraine. So this is absolutely huge, guys. I mean, there's so many countries getting involved now. We have North Korea jumping into the battle, okay? And we just heard recently China sending drones over to Russia as well. Iran sending Shahed drones over to Russia that they've been firing into Ukraine for years now. Okay, now the Yemen Houthis potentially sending some of their fighters over there as well. Now, maybe some of these men are being duped. Maybe some of them are voluntarily joining to fight, but this is absolutely huge, guys. This war is definitely expanding very quickly. So it says here, Russia's armed forces have recruited hundreds of Yemeni men to fight in Ukraine, brought by a shadowy trafficking operation that highlights the growing links between Moscow and the Houthi rebel group. Yemeni recruits who traveled to Russia told the Financial Times they were promised high-salaried employment and even Russian citizenship. When they arrived with the help of the Houthi-linked company, they were then forcibly inducted into the Russian army and sent to the front lines in Ukraine. So it looks like they were not expecting to become soldiers, and all of a sudden they show up and they're forced to the front lines. So the appearance of the ragtag group of mainly involuntary Yemeni mercenaries in Ukraine shows how the conflict is increasingly sucking in soldiers from abroad as casualties rise and the Kremlin tries to avoid a full mobilization. They include mercenaries from Nepal and India and some 12,000 North Korean regular army troops who arrived to take part in combat against Ukrainian forces in the Russian province of Kursk. So I just want to comment on this real quick in terms of Russian mobilization. Now, we just I showed you guys a video yesterday from it was regarding Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, okay? And he came out saying in an interview that apparently there was no need for mobilization inside of Russia, that, lots of young men were just signing up by the hundreds every single day to voluntarily go fight for Ukraine. They're being paid well, they're undergoing vigorous training. They don't really need to mobilize much. Now, this may explain as well, partially at least, why Russia's not having to mobilize their own citizens to a maximum level, is because they're getting a lot of their troops from external countries, okay? Other friendly countries like North Korea and now potentially Yemen, okay? So that's very, very big news, okay? So it says here the Yemeni recruitment effort also underscores how Russia, driven by its confrontation with the West, is growing closer to Iran and allied militant groups in the Middle East. The Houthis, a militant group backed by Tehran, disrupted global supply chains with a missile campaign targeting shipping in the Red Sea after the start of the war in Gaza last year. U.S. diplomats say the entente between the Kremlin and the Houthis, unimaginable before the war in Ukraine, is a sign of how far Russia is willing to go to extend the conflict into new theaters, including the Middle East. Now, we have heard recently, over the past few months, that Russia was thinking about potentially transferring some P-800 Onyx anti-ship cruise missiles over to the Houthis as well, that they could potentially use to target ships in the Gulf of Aden or the Red Sea. And it would be much more effective for them to target these ships and destroy them. Now, we have not heard of any official confirmation of that yet, but we did hear in the past that Russia was preparing to do that. So definitely, Russia is working with the Yemen Houthis right now. We know about this. Also, obviously, Iran too. Iran fully backs the Yemen Houthis. So definitely, like I said, this war is for sure expanding and getting out of control very quickly. And Russia looks like they're just recruiting mercenaries from everywhere to get them involved in this war with Ukraine. And obviously, there's lots of reports about lots of NATO troops that are even involved with Ukraine as well. So this war is definitely expanded to the extreme, with lots of countries getting involved. So let's go ahead and hop on over to X as well. We're going to start off here with ViceGrad24 says, breaking. First video appears of Houthi mercenaries fighting with the Russians against Ukraine. Financial Times reports that hundreds of Houthis joined the Russian army after a Houthi-linked company secured their transfer. North Korean and Houthi soldiers are now invading Europe. So take a look at this, guys. About 33 seconds long. It will have some subtitles here, and this video is supposedly claiming to be Houthi fighters inside the war against Ukraine, fighting on behalf of Russia. Take a look.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يا جماعة، أمس شخص من زملائنا حاول أن ينتحر وتم إسعافه إلى المستشفى، والحمد لله، يعني الحمد لله جت سليمة. احنا الآن تحت القصف، ألغام، درون، حفريات، نقل خشب. هؤلاء الشباب خشبة طولها يعني ما أقول لك، يعني أكثر من 10 متر، أكثر من 10 متر، يحملوها 4 أشخاص. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Okay, so the first thing I was looking at here was the environment, and this kind of looks like it could be inside of Ukraine or Russia based on the environment. This doesn't look like how it would look inside of Yemen or maybe somewhere else, but you guys let me know what you think down below. Do you think these are Yemeni fighters inside of Ukraine or potentially inside of Russia, maybe in the Kursk region? Who really knows? But if you notice, they were saying they were under bombardment, so that kind of shows that they're in a war zone, right? Let me know what you think down below. But again, very crazy story coming out today. So all we really had was this report from the Financial Times and then this video coming out on X. So I'm sure over the next couple days, there will be more and more information regarding Houthi mercenaries joining the fight against Ukraine, fighting with Russia. So we're going to move on to some other updates now from ViceGrad24 breaking. Yesterday's Ukrainian long-range strike against the Russian Kursk region destroyed the radar system of a Russian S-400 air defense battery. So here's pictures of S-400 air defense systems, and if a radar station was destroyed, then that basically renders many of these air defense systems inoperable. Okay, they obviously need the radars to target incoming missiles or anything like that into their territory. And again, yeah, what's being reported is a radar station for the S-400 systems in the Kursk region was targeted, potentially even destroyed. Here's another report as well from PS01. The S-400 radar was hit in Kursk. Russians are blind from now on. So Andrei Kovalenko, I believe this is him on Telegram, posting on Telegram stating here yesterday in the direction of the Kursk, the radar of the S-400 air defense system was hit. She is blind without him. This will require the operation of other means over Kershnia to defeat military targets on enemy territory. Okay, so looks like the Russians could be blind in the Kursk region and not have air defense capabilities. And again, whenever we first saw this report, here's the original report right here with the video footage of ATACMS yesterday striking into the Kursk region. So I've reported to you guys that most likely something very significant was being attacked, and a radar station would definitely be something very significant. As obviously, if they don't have any air defense capabilities, they can't defend themselves in the Kursk region. And the Ukrainians are doing everything they can to hold on to that territory right now. So this will allow more missiles to come into the Kursk region and defend the troops that are currently fighting there right now, the Ukrainians, that is. So obviously a big hit, and looks like the S-400 radar system potentially destroyed in the Kursk region. Okay, so moving on to more updates from Max 24, Ukraine may launch next ATACMS missile strike on Rostov region, according to the Wall Street Journal. 4 military airfields are under the sights in this region. In total, the U.S. has already drawn up a map of about 200 military targets on the Russian territory that are within the range of ATACMS. Okay, so I'll show you guys that map. I think we got one here in just a minute. Yeah, so it looks like our next strike that we're going to be hearing about very soon is in the Rostov region, which is closer to like southeastern Ukraine, just over the border. This would be southwestern Russia, very close to the Krasnodar Krai region as well. We talk a lot about that area. These areas typically come under attack by drones a lot, but looks like we're going to have ATACMS going into that area very soon as well, according to the Wall Street Journal. But we'll wait to see what the Ukrainians decide to do next. Here's that map now from next to Wall Street Journal. U.S. maps 200 Russian military targets for Ukraine's ATACMS strikes. The report suggests Ukraine may target facilities in Russia's Rostov region next, including several military airfields. So here's that map to kind of show the range of ATACMS of where they could target inside of Russian territory. So the Rostov region is going to be down here, okay, closer to like southeastern Ukraine, Donetsk region. This is the Rostov region down here. Here's Krasnodar region down here. So it looks like this will be the first target that Ukraine's going to go after, aside from what we've mainly seen was up here in the Kursk region and also the Bryansk region. Okay, so up here is where Storm Shadow and ATACMS has mainly been hitting. Looks like Ukraine's going to start heading down here in the southern regions of Russia as well next. So we'll see what happens here in the coming days. Okay, now for Max 24, SBU showed the wreckage of Oreshnik Cedar missile, with which the Russians hit Dnipro. Okay, so again, Russia's considering this missile to be called the Oreshnik hypersonic medium-range ballistic missile, but the Ukrainians are claiming that apparently it's called the Cedar missile. I was calling it Cedar the other day, but I believe the correct pronunciation should be Cedar. But if you guys know the pronunciation, let me know down below. Okay, so these are pictures apparently from the wreckage of that Oreshnik missile that was fired from Russia onto Dnipro just the other day. Okay, this is a medium-range hypersonic ballistic missile, and apparently the Russians are claiming that there are no air defenses that can shoot this thing down, and they're also warning that they could strike other European nations with this, even like the UK, for example, considering that the UK has given Ukraine the ability and permission to use Storm Shadow cruise missiles inside of Russian territory, that they could strike the UK with this missile apparently within 17 minutes. Okay, so obviously very scary if even NATO does not have capabilities of shooting these down. Now, can the THAAD air defense system shoot it down? I don't really know the answer to that, to be honest with you. But if you guys know the answer to that, let me know down below. But the Russians are apparently claiming that nobody in the world has capabilities of shooting down this supposedly advanced missile. Okay, so moving on to another update now. From next to Zelensky on Oreshnik strike. Ukraine partners are working on a response. We are analyzing the missile and collaborating with partners to determine its characteristics. President Zelensky said, our goal is to find a collective response to this escalation by Russia. So it looks like Ukraine, along with its partners with NATO and the United States, are working on a response to this missile. And I'm sure pretty soon we're going to hear that Ukraine is going to be getting some advanced air defense systems, and it potentially could be THAAD. As far as I know, the THAAD air defense system may be one of the only systems capable of shooting down this type of missile. So we'll have to see what happens here, but it looks like the West is working on a response to this right now. Okay, also from the Kiev Independent, there are indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of November 24th, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So this is the most recent chart here showing the losses of Russian troops and vehicles, things like that inside the war. Looks like they lost around 1,020 troops just over the last 24 hours, 17 APVs. 14 vehicles and fuel tanks. Looks like another 4 tanks as well being destroyed. Some artillery systems, UAVs. So it looks like some losses, a little bit less in terms of troop losses. What we've normally been seeing is anywhere from 1,500 and up. So it looks like a little bit less than normal. Okay, so we're going to move on to another update now from La Punchline de Yakovlev. If I'm pronouncing that right, United States are preparing to strengthen their diplomacy against Russia by sending JASSM cruise missiles to Ukraine. Okay, so we've been hearing this for a while now. Apparently, Reuters was reporting this, that we've been hearing for months now that Ukraine was supposed to be receiving these JASSM missiles, maybe even some extended range ones. This would give them greater strike capabilities inside of Russia and be able to hit more targets, and also yet another option of missiles to be using aside from ATACMS, Storm Shadow, Scalp. This would give them other capabilities. So we're still hearing that that Ukraine should be receiving these pretty soon, and hopefully by the end of the year, I think that's supposed to be what is expected for Ukraine, that they will have these JASSMs in their possession maybe by the end of December or early January, okay? So next update from Kiev Post, Sunday afternoon in Kiev as families try to enjoy the weekend. Russians launch Shahed drones, likely loaded with thermobaric warheads, onto the city to terrorize the population. So it looks like we had some drones as well. I think mainstream news was reporting that Russia and Ukraine were exchanging drone attacks on each other, but I haven't seen anything significant to really report. But we do got a 7-second clip here of what appears to be a Shahed drone from Russia that's flying over Kiev. Take a look at this. So whenever it zooms in, you can definitely tell that is a Shahed drone from Russia. These are Iranian made. The Iranians send this over to Russia. I think Russia even manufactures some of these in their territory as well. So it looks like one of those were flying over the city of Kiev just during the afternoon. Someone was able to capture that thing flying over the city. Okay, also from Bliskovka, Russian military shot 2 civilian women in Toretsk. Another person was wounded, according to the Donetsk Regional Prosecutor's Office. The occupants entered an apartment in a residential area of the city and deliberately opened fire on civilians. A pre-trial investigation has been launched. Okay, so this to me is just absolutely insane. I mean, we continue to hear a lot of this recently. I just reported to you guys in the last week as well. There was an innocent woman just walking in the street. I think it was in the Luhansk region or Donetsk region, one of the two. And she was just basically shot, okay? I don't know exactly why. And there was an investigation into that as well. She was completely unarmed, and she was just wearing a jacket, walking through the streets. And apparently, according to the information, the Russians had shot her, okay? So this is the second or third time recently we've been hearing this. We also know the Russians have been executing many Ukrainian POWs that are captured. So definitely craziness just happening over here. Lots of evil gripping on to these areas over here in eastern Ukraine. So very sad to see that, guys. Also from the Ukrainian Review, Ukraine has been hit by a surge in Russian ballistic missile attacks, about a third of which use North Korean weapons that can only fly because they run on Western circuitry, according to CNN. Crucial components used in the North Korean missiles are produced by 9 Western manufacturers. Some parts of the missiles were produced as recently as 2023. Okay, so looks like the North Koreans are still able to get their hands on Western circuit boards, okay? We've even heard of like computer chips that they're still able to get a hold of these somehow, and maybe they're getting through other partners in Asia. This is a big problem, okay, because North Korea is supposed to be heavily sanctioned. They're not supposed to be able to get their hands on this type of equipment, but somehow they're still able to. And apparently, from what I've heard, is majority of the components inside of these missiles are actually Western made. And some reports were saying that literally the only part of the ballistic missiles that are coming into Ukraine that are actually North Korean made is just the shell. And many times they say the shells are just falling apart. They're just eroding away very quickly. It's a very cheap metal or whatever type of aluminum that they're using or something like that on these missiles. So very crazy, guys. Looks like the North Koreans are still getting their hands on Western equipment, and that's allowing them to send missiles over to Russia, and then eventually this ends up into Ukraine. So Very crazy. Also for Vicegrad 24, another Russian soldier called up to fight against Ukraine. Okay, so this video is very interesting because it appears to show an elderly Russian man who is even holding a cane and also a rifle in his hands, and he's dressed up in a Russian military uniform, and apparently he's being called up to fight inside of Ukraine. I'm not sure if this is just like a parody video, but lots of people are passing this video around as if it is kind of indicating that the Russians are even calling up elderly men who can barely even walk to go fight inside of Ukraine. Take a look at this.
Спецназ ХМАО, блядь, вот он. 49 лет, блядь.
Двухкрестный, блядь, разойдись!
Вот он.
Вот твои!
Спецназер, ты откуда приехал? Спецназ.
All right, so if this is true, this is definitely very sad to see an elderly man literally with a cane holding a rifle in his hands. And, you know, are they going to send him to the front line, or is this just some type of joke? I really don't know. But again, many sources are claiming that this man actually is being sent in to fight. So that is pretty insane if that is that happens to be true. Okay, so moving on to another update from Max 24, preparing to launch Gerbera drones stored in concrete shelters at one of Russia's airfields. So take a look at this. They have these shelters that are built with concrete to protect these drones as they store them in here prior to being launched. This is a picture of a Gerbera drone inside of Russia at some of their airfields as they're preparing to launch them into Ukraine. Look at that. There's just dozens of them right here in these little shelters that have been built. Okay, also from Anton Yeroshenko, Russia produces as many weapons and ammunition in 3 months as the entire European Union does in a year, says Boris Pistorius, the defense minister of Germany. Okay, so this is actually very scary to think about. Okay, so all of Europe produces less weapons and ammunition in 3 months, okay, or in an entire year than Russia does in 3 months, okay? So that's very big news. This just goes to show as well that Russia's definitely in a wartime economy if they're producing so much weapons, ammunition, just anything for this war inside of Ukraine. I mean, obviously they're at war with Ukraine. It makes sense that they would be producing all of that. And they're also fighting up against NATO, okay? So this is a very big development that shows how weak Europe is right now as well. And we know that NATO's been calling on many of their nations to start, upping their defense spending. Only a few countries like Poland, for example, are actually upping their defense spending quite a bit. I think the UK is going to be upping it a tiny bit as well. But for the most part, many NATO nations do not have high defense spending. And maybe they should be right now, considering that if this war ends up kicking off, then NATO's going to be on the front line, or at least European nations, especially like Poland, Baltic nations, will be on the front line fighting against the Russians if that happens to be the case, okay? So that's kind of scary to think about. Max 24, Baba Yaga drone work on Russian position. So this is video footage that appears to show a Russian track vehicle that has been destroyed from a Baba Yaga drone. Now, a Baba Yaga drone is a drone that is like a small FPV drone for a quadcopter drone that usually carries like a large grenade, and they usually use these and drop the grenades onto vehicles, sometimes troops. So the Baba Yaga drones are usually used to destroy vehicles and equipment. So take a look at this. Okay, so I don't know if these are Ukrainians. I think it might be because it kind of shows one of their arms here. It looks like a Ukrainian outfit. And it looks like they were able to locate one of these Russian track vehicles that were destroyed potentially by a Baba Yaga drone. And I have shown you guys these in the past. These things are very effective, and this just goes to show even more how effective drones are inside of modern warfare nowadays, okay? And it makes many of these tanks and vehicles like this, for the most part, makes them look obsolete, as these drones are just destroying lots of vehicles from the Russians, okay? Also from next to Zelensky, Putin admits Kursk operation is key to the fate of the special military operation. The Ukrainian president believes losing control of the Kursk region has destabilized Putin's regime. Losses like those in Kursk, Putin has never experienced anything like this before. Never, Zelensky emphasized. Okay, so We've been hearing a lot about this from Zelensky, that the Kursk operation is very crucial, that it has prevented another front from opening up on the northern side of their country, which is where Sumy would be right now. Sumy would be under Russian control, or at least part of it probably would be right now if they did not launch this operation. And think about how much military equipment has been pulled away from the eastern front inside of Ukraine over to the Kursk region just to repel this Ukrainian attack. So it's definitely bleeding a lot of Russian soldiers and also their equipment at the same time. Many tanks, vehicles being destroyed in the Kursk region. And it's going to make it more difficult for Russia to continue pushing on the east. But at the same time, we are still seeing that Russia is making some gains on the eastern front. Also from next to Bloomberg, Bloomberg reports Biden planned NATO invitation for Ukraine but changed course. The Biden administration decided to delay a formal NATO invitation for Ukraine, citing low short-term success of chances, Bloomberg reports. Instead, the U.S. will focus on bilateral security agreements to offer Ukraine specific guarantees. Okay, so looks like there's not going to be any NATO invitation coming. We were hearing that maybe the Biden administration may offer Ukraine NATO invitation before Biden gets out of office, that could be a huge a huge thing for Biden on his way out to make him look better. But looks like that's not going to be the case. They're not going to be pushing that direction to get Ukraine into NATO. But who knows? Maybe next year we may be seeing that. We may see an invitation for Ukraine. But there's obviously a lot of hurdles right now in regards to that. Okay, also a couple more things to show you guys. We got a video here. Pretty crazy to see this from War Translator Dmitry. Says Russian soldiers on a buggy ran over a sapper who was trying to warn them about mines on a road. So there's going to be a Russian sapper, a man over here walking, a Russian soldier, and he's going to be trying to stop a vehicle, a Russian military vehicle that's coming down this road to warn them that there's a mine in the middle of the road. They accidentally hit him, push him off to the side of the road, and they end up, at the very end of this video, they actually do run over the mine and blow up, and you can kind of see the explosion just towards the end. I'll show you guys. Take a look at this. Pretty crazy.
Беги! Машину, Валера, машину тормози!
Okay, so I don't know if you guys could see towards the end there, but we'll go ahead and I'm going to pause this for a moment. So right about here is where the Russian sapper gets hit by the car. He gets pushed off to the side over here, and then towards the very end, right before the clip ends, you can see right here, there's an explosion right there, and the vehicle ends up hitting the mine on the ground and actually blew up because they were completely ignoring this Russian sapper and his warnings telling them to stop. You can also hear the man recording telling them to turn left and get out of the way of the mine. Looks like they did not hear his warning signs, ended up running over the mine and actually blew up. So that's pretty sad and crazy to see that. Yeah, that's what happened inside of Russia, or potentially inside Ukraine recently as well. Okay, also from Max 24, Russia's introducing artificial intelligence into Shaheds to create swarms of drones that will coordinate attacks to suppress Ukrainian air defenses, according to The Guardian. Currently, the production of Shaheds is hundreds per week. Okay, so we have been hearing about this for a while, that the Russians are preparing to produce a bunch of these Shahed drones that have artificial intelligence attached to them. Okay, so it will make it much more difficult for Ukraine to shoot these down with air defense systems. And we also know Russia's even producing drones that are even decoy drones. Some of them don't even have warheads on them. They'll produce them out of like cardboard or sometimes styrofoam or very cheap particle board and make them appear as if they are an actual attack drone, but sometimes they're just decoys. So Russia's getting very sophisticated with many of these drones, starting to produce lots of different types, and now starting to use artificial intelligence, Okay, now one more thing I want to show you guys before we get you out of here from Max 24. The next 8 weeks will be the most difficult in the history of Ukraine since 1991, according to the Ukrainian ambassador to Brazil, Andriy Melnik. When Trump's inauguration day comes, I'm afraid the decision will already be made by then, and it will be more difficult for us, he said. Okay, so it looks like Ukraine definitely is worried about the Trump administration getting into office. There's lots of worries right now that aid can be cut off to Ukraine the minute that he gets into office. We really don't know what's going to happen yet. It could really go one way or the other. It could really benefit Russia or it could really benefit Ukraine. We really don't know what's going to happen yet. We've heard some rumors coming out from some of the advisors to Trump that they may try to create a demilitarized zone in the eastern portion of Ukraine, freeze the battle lines, and kind of give up the territories on the eastern side of Ukraine over to Russia, or at least kind of force Ukraine to do so or encourage them to. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen yet, but this is more show as well that Ukraine definitely appears to be somewhat worried about this. But from what we've heard with Volodymyr Zelensky, he appears to be, for the most part, optimistic to work with Donald Trump. Maybe he's just trying to look at the brighter side of things, but we know that this war could potentially come to an end by 2025. And hopefully it does. And when it does, we'll see if it ends up favoring Ukraine. But the number one thing is to end the fighting so that way people can stop suffering. At least in my opinion, I think that's the best case outcome in terms of this war. So that way innocent people can stop losing their lives, especially the innocent civilians on either side, whether it's in Russia or Ukraine. But yeah, definitely lots of updates coming out today from this war. Wanted to get you caught up on this. I want to thank you so much for hanging out here with me today. If you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.